And this is a Fox News alert. The crisis in the Middle East is intensifying tonight after Hamas militants launched a rocket attack on Jerusalem. And now the Israeli cabinet has authorized activating up to 75,000 military reservists. Now hundreds of missiles have been launched into Israel from Gaza following Wednesday's targeted killing of the Hamas military chief on Wednesday. And now the leader of Egypt says he will back Gaza against Israel's, quote, blatant aggression. Our own David Lee Miller is standing by at the Gaza border tonight with the very latest. David.
Sean, it's almost 5 in the morning here along the border. We're about a couple of hundred yards from Gaza, close enough to actually hear the call to prayer coming from many of the mosques. We also heard during the past several hours and heard and saw loud explosions. The Israeli military keeping up the pressure, targeting rocket launching sites, as well as the militants themselves. There have been, in the last few hours, 2 reported so-called targeted assassinations. The death toll now stands at 29 Palestinians killed during this conflict, 13 of them militants, 16 civilians. 3 Israeli civilians also have been killed. The Israeli military saying that its campaign is going to continue until Hamas begs for a ceasefire. Meanwhile, in just the last 24 hours, Hamas militants fired at least 150 rockets in the direction of Israel. About half of them, though, were intercepted by Israel's missile defense system. But as you mentioned, at least one of those rockets landed just outside of Jerusalem. This was the first time that Jerusalem has come under attack since 1970. The rocket landed in an empty field. There were no injuries. According to Hamas, the rocket that was launched was an Iranian-made weapon called a Fajr-5. The Israeli military has tried repeatedly to knock out as many of those Iranian rockets as possible. Apparently, though, they still have a number in the arsenal. Also hit today Tel Aviv. A rocket landed in the sea. Again, no injuries. But as the heartland of Israel continues to come under pressure, the government here also under political pressure to stop the rocket attacks. And lastly, Sean, at this hour, as you mentioned, it looks increasingly likely that there could be a ground incursion taking place in just the next few hours. We have heard what sounds like tanks off in the distance moving closer to the border. They have approved the mobilization of 75,000 reservists, and the area not far from where I'm standing has become a closed military zone. So it looks increasingly like things are going to escalate. Sean?
All right. Thank you, David, and stay safe. And joining us now from Tel Aviv is Danon. He is a member of the Likud party in the Knesset. Danny, thank you for being with us. I know it's very early in the morning there. What we have, reservists now are being called up. We see tanks beginning to move towards the border. All indications are that this looks like preparations for a potential ground war. What's going on?
Sean, we are very determined. We will do whatever is necessary to bring peace to the south of Israel. Look at the back of the picture in Tel Aviv. It is quiet now, but in few hours, millions of people will have to run to shelters again, children. That's why we have to be very determined. And the government decided that we will do whatever is necessary. Now we attack only from the air, only military targets. But if we have to, we will go into Gaza and we will clean up the mess there.
Yeah, well, one of the things that makes this more problematic for the Israelis is, number one, you've got Morsi, who has been anti-Israel for a long time and part of a terror group called the Muslim Brotherhood, coupled with now they've got Russian laser-guided missiles that they're using with a far greater range than they had in the past.
The Prime Minister of Egypt visited Gaza yesterday. It was a precedent. I didn't hear him condemning the Hamas sending missiles on civilians in Israel. I did not hear him saying anything about stability in the region. And I think the Egyptians must decide. If they want to get support from the US, from the EU, they're asking for a lot of money, they have to take a stand and not to stand with the terrorists.
Yeah. What do you make, and what should they make of now that Egypt has sided with Hamas in this? What should the United States, what would you like to see the United States do? Because we give them billions and billions of dollars in U.S. aid. And I think the United States, this is one of these moments where they ought to take a stand. The president says he supports Israel, says he'll always support Israel. Israel is under fire. Rockets are pounding their cities. Should the president cut off aid to Israel? Would you like to see, cut off aid to Egypt?
the U.S. wants to see stability in the region, and the President and the Congress and the Senate endorsing Israel in the last few hours. But I think it's about time to tell the Egyptians, make a stand. You want to get money from the U.S., you have to stop with the violence, you have to stop endorsing Hamas. You know, Sean, after the U.S. killed Osama bin Laden, Hamas was the only organization that condemned the U.S. So you cannot ally yourself with the Hamas in one hand, and on the other hand come to the U.S. and get billions of U.S. dollars.
Let me ask you this. I have been saying, I believe that we're going to look back in history and refer to this as the time of the radical Islamists. We now know what happened with the Arab Spring in Egypt. Muslim Brotherhood's in charge. We see what happened in Libya. We don't know what's going to unfold in Syria. On top of that, I would argue that Jordan has been weakened as well, and they are probably ripe for takeover. And we see the influence of Iran all throughout the region. Am I correct? Would this be an accurate description, the rise of the radical Islamists?
I think you are absolutely correct. And I would call it not the Arab Spring. I would call it the Arab Winter. And look what's happening now. The missiles that are being sent into Israel are coming from Iran. They are being shipped into the Sinai Peninsula and then into Gaza, and then they're using it against Israel. So Iran is the core of evil in the region. And we see today what they are doing in the south, in Lebanon, and we will have to deal with them eventually. Now we are dealing with the Hamas, but the main source of evil is coming from Iran.
And where's President Obama?
Well, last night President Obama spoke with Prime Minister Netanyahu, and he said that he understands that Israel has the right to defend itself, but it is too early to call. Let's wait. Now it's easy because we are targeting the military targets. But if we have to go in, it will be ugly. Then we will need the U.S. to be with us.
Thank you for being with us. Coming up next, Reverend